have you ever found yourself looking at an old illustration of a futuristic city, with its gleaming silver spires and flying cars, and felt a strange, quiet ache in your chest? Not because you missed the past, but because you missed the future we were promised? It's a curious sensation, isn't it? The feeling that the vibrant, strange, and exciting tomorrow we once imagined has somehow slipped away, replaced by a present that feels oddly recycled. If you've ever felt this way, I want you to know you're not alone. And today, I'd like to sit with you for a while and explore why so many of us feel this sense of quiet displacement. We're going to talk about a feeling that some have called hauntology. But don't worry, it's not about ghosts in the traditional sense. It's about something much more subtle. It's about the ghosts of futures that never actually arrived. This is where the feeling becomes clearer, because hauntology isn't a theory to be proven, but a shared atmosphere. A sense that our culture is haunted by the echoes of an optimism we can no longer quite reach. Think back to how people in the mid-20th century looked toward the year 2000. There was a specific texture to that anticipation. A belief that life would soon look and feel entirely different, that we were moving toward a horizon of endless novelty and better worlds. But as we moved through the decades, something changed. It can seem like the future, as a concept, was slowly canceled, leaving us in a present that feels less like a new frontier and more like a collection of memories. You might notice it when you walk through a shopping mall or scroll through a streaming service. How many of the stories we tell today are versions of stories we've already heard? How the aesthetics of the 70s, 80s, and 90s seem to loop back around every few years, never truly leaving the room. It's often described as a kind of cultural exhaustion, not because we've run out of talent, but because it's become harder to imagine a next that isn't just a polished version of before. Some have noticed that even our technology, which advances so quickly, often looks backward for its soul. We use cutting-edge software to make digital photos look like grainy film. We listen to music that mimics the hiss and crackle of old vinyl. We crave the imperfections of the past because the perfection of the present feels a little bit hollow. This is what many people quietly sense when they talk about feeling stuck. It's the realization that while time is moving forward, our cultural imagination might be caught in a loop. It can feel like we are living in the ruins of a future that was supposed to be grander, walking through a world of high-definition screens and instant communication that somehow feels less futuristic than a grainy black-and-white sketch from 1950. Here's what many people quietly sense: that we are mourning a loss we can't quite name. The loss of the feeling that tomorrow will be fundamentally better than today. It isn't a loud or dramatic grief. It's more like the way a room feels after a party has ended. There's a lingering energy, a few echoes of laughter, but the air is still. We see this in our media, where the most popular films are often sequels, reboots, or prequels. It's as if we are afraid to step out of the familiar light of what we know, as if the new has become too difficult to conceptualize. It's been suggested that we are haunted by lost futures, ideas for how society, art, and life could have been, which were abandoned along the way. Think of the way old science fiction movies portrayed the world. Those visions were often naive, maybe even a little bit silly, but they possessed a genuine sense of direction. Today, when we look at the future in our stories, it's often through the lens of survival. We imagine things breaking down rather than opening up. It's a subtle shift, but it changes how it feels to be alive. It changes the way we look at the horizon. You might find yourself feeling nostalgic for a time you never even lived through. Perhaps you feel a pull toward the warm glow of a cathode ray tube television or the specific synth-heavy music of a decade before you were born. This isn't just about wanting to go back in time. It's more likely that you're drawn to the promise that those eras held. You're looking for the spark of possibility that seemed to exist then. It's as if those old aesthetics are the only places where the future is still alive. And so we return to them, trying to catch a glimpse of that vanished light. This is where the feeling becomes a bit more clear. Hauntology is the presence of an absence. The way a song can feel like it's coming from another room, or the way a photograph of a busy street from the 1960s can make you feel like you've lost a friend. It's the sense that the present is being crowded out by the past. Not because we are obsessed with history, but because we are struggling to build a now that feels solid. People sometimes sense that culture has become a bit like a museum. We are very good at curating what has already happened, at remixing and archiving, but the feeling of a breakthrough, a moment where everything changes, feels increasingly rare. This isn't meant to be a critique of our modern world. There are so many wonderful things about the time we live in, but it's okay to acknowledge the quiet melancholy of the loop. It can seem like we are waiting for a train that was taken off the tracks years ago. Standing on the platform, looking at our watches, and wondering why the landscape hasn't changed. This feeling of the future being canceled doesn't have to lead to despair. It can actually be a very tender thing, a way of honoring the hopes of those who came before us. It's a form of collective memory, a way of saying that those dreams of a brighter, stranger, and more unified world still matter, even if they haven't come true yet. When we notice the hauntology in our music, our films, and our empty spaces, we are participating in a quiet kind of mourning. We are acknowledging that something valuable was lost in the transition to the 21st century. Some notice that this feeling is especially strong in places that were built for a future that moved on. Abandoned malls, old airports, or the space-age architecture of mid-century suburbs. These places feel haunted because they are the physical remains of an optimism that ran out of steam. They are monuments to a tomorrow that didn't stay. Here's what many people quietly sense: that we are living in a time of waiting, a pause in the grand narrative of human progress, where we are trying to figure out where to go next. In the meantime, we surround ourselves with the echoes. We wear vintage clothes, we play retro games, and we listen to lo-fi beats that sound like they're being played on a dusty tape deck. These things are comforting because they feel real in a way that the slick, frictionless present sometimes doesn't. They have a weight to them, a history, a soul. It's important to remember that hauntology isn't about being stuck in the past in a negative way. It's about noticing how the past refuses to leave the present. It's about the way an old melody can suddenly make you feel like there's a world just out of reach. A world where things were simpler, or perhaps just more hopeful. Many people find that this feeling helps them make sense of the modern world. It explains why, despite all our progress, something feels like it's missing. It's not that we've failed as a generation or as individuals. It's more that we've reached a point where the old map doesn't work anymore, and we haven't drawn a new one yet. So we look at the old maps, we study the paths people thought we would take, and we feel that gentle sadness for the destinations we never reached. It's often described as a nostalgia for the future. A strange phrase, but one that perfectly captures the heart of this feeling. How can you be nostalgic for something that hasn't happened? You can, if the idea of that thing was so powerful that it became a part of who you are. We are nostalgic for the feeling of looking forward. We miss the sensation of believing that the best is yet to come. This is where the feeling becomes clearer. Hauntology is a way of staying connected to our imagination. It's a refusal to let those old dreams completely disappear. Even if the future was canceled, we can still hear the static of its transmission. We can still find beauty in the echoes. It can feel like we are all part of a quiet conversation, one that takes place in the margins of our busy lives, asking what happened to the magic of the next. This reflection isn't meant to provide an answer or a fix, because you can't fix a feeling that is so deeply woven into the fabric of our time. Instead, it's about giving that feeling a name and realizing that the melancholy you feel isn't a sign of something wrong with you. It's a sign of your sensitivity to the world around you. You are noticing the layers of time. You are hearing the ghosts of what could have been, and there is something quite beautiful about that. Some have suggested that we are in a period of cultural mourning, taking the time to grieve the lost possibilities of the 20th century, before we can truly move into the 21st. If that's true, then this feeling of hauntology isn't a dead end. It's a bridge. It's a necessary pause, a moment where culture is listening to what it lost, sitting in the quiet and waiting for a new sound to emerge. It's like the space between breaths, or the silence after a long piece of music. It feels heavy, but it's also full of potential. When we stop trying to force the new, and instead listen to the haunting, we might find that the future isn't gone. It's just waiting for us to find a new way to speak about it. This is why the future was canceled. Not because we ran out of ideas, but because the old ones were so strong we needed time to let them go. We are living in the afterglow of a very bright era, and it takes time for our eyes to adjust to a different kind of light. So, the next time you feel that strange ache while looking at an old sci-fi book cover, or when you hear a song that sounds like it was recorded in a dream, don't push it away. Let yourself sit with it. Let yourself wonder about the futures that never arrived. And know that by doing so, you are keeping the spirit of imagination alive. To feel haunted by the future is to acknowledge that the future matters. And that's a very hopeful thing to believe in its own quiet way. We are not just repeating the past. We are listening to it, and perhaps, in that listening, we will eventually hear the first notes of a tomorrow we haven't imagined yet. It's a long, slow process, like waiting for a garden to grow in the ruins. But there is life in the echoes, and there is beauty in the ghosts. We are walking together through this haunted present, looking for the signs of what comes next. And even if the path isn't clear, we are moving. The cancellation of the future wasn't the end of the story. It was just the end of one chapter, and we are currently living in the space between the pages. It's a quiet place, a reflective place, and it's a place where we can learn to dream again, even if the dreams look a little different than they used to. Hauntology is simply the way we remember that we are still looking for something, that we are still waiting for the horizon to open up, and that the feeling of loss is just another way of saying that we still care about what's possible. Thank you for taking this time to reflect with me, and for being willing to sit in the quiet for a while. If this reflection resonated with you, feel free to like, comment, and subscribe. Thanks for being here.